what I'm going to talk about is the work that I do focuses on a lot on religious freedom from the context within the Islamic faith, um, and um, and how persecution, religious persecution, is exercised in that context. Um, yes, there is a lot of issues here in the United States when it comes to religious freedom and the challenges to religious freedom when the Religious Freedom Reformation Act is being exercised to justify discrimination in the name of religion. But the discrimination in the name of religion has been happening a lot in the Muslim communities, whether it be here in the United States in the West or even in Muslim majority countries. So I will start by sharing a little bit of my personal story and why I came about. I'm totally changing course from what I was intending to speak about, but actually the two speakers really triggered some things that I felt that, okay, this needs to be addressed in a more personalized, granular way. So one of the reasons why I started Muslims for Progressive Values was when, after 9/11, I decided to study Islam for myself. And throughout the process of relearning Islam, I discovered that Islam was actually much more egalitarian and really rooted in social justice than the way it's being practiced. And in my previous career, I was a songwriter producer, and I felt, well, the least I could do for society as an American is to produce an Islamic pop CD that really promoted the values of human rights, feminism in the context of Islam, human rights, freedom of expression, all that good stuff. The theology of liberation theology. And what I was stunned was that none of the Islamic outlets in the United States would sell the CD because I was a female singer, and that was deemed, the female voice is deemed to be forbidden, to be sexual, and needs to be covered up. And that because I was using all sorts of musical instrumentation, I mean, I did that for a living, and that too was deemed forbidden. And so that was the censorship. So that was their interpretation, and so that was their way of censoring and limiting your religious expression. And so, like the introduction by Jeremy, I am born, raised Muslim from Malaysia originally, and so this version of Islam is very alien to me. And so I decided then to leave the traditional mosque I was a part of and to start Muslims for Progressive Values that really basically went back to the roots of the Quran, back to the egalitarian values for the right to think and the right to express yourself and the right to actually express your faith the way that is in a just and universal way. And since the founding of Muslims for Progressive Values since 2007, we've evolved to become a human rights organization, and so that's why I'm the UN Multi-Faith Advisory Council, etc. And the human rights abuses in the name, justified in the name of Islam, is in the name of Sharia law, is really quite appalling. And some of the work that I've been doing in the last 5 years is challenging these human rights abuses at the United Nations through various mechanisms. And part of the work, for example, is what we do is we highlight a lot of the human rights abuses. So when you're talking about persecution in the name of religion, there's a lot of that that's happening within, intra the Islamic faith, within Muslim communities. So in Pakistan, you have Sunnis persecution of the Shia or the Ahmadiyas, and the same in Indonesia as well. In Nigeria, you have a young man by the name of Yahya, and he has actually been sentenced to death by the Sharia court for a song that he wrote and performed that was deemed blasphemous. And he's 22 years old, and he's part of Sufi Tariqa. And so the list goes on when it comes to religious persecution in the name of particularly a state definition of religion. And as a progressive Muslim that originated from Malaysia, Malaysia used to be a very progressive and very what they call very easy Islam, but we're actually very inclusive and very accepting of the differences of faith, because we have so many faith traditions in Malaysian society. But now you see the same sort of what Reverend Margaret Rose was talking about, Christian nationalism. You have Islamic nationalism in Malaysia as well. And that really saddens me, because you see the society really falling apart. And actually, whatever religious nationalism, whether it be Buddhism, as you've seen in Myanmar, Hinduism, whether you see it in India, you're seeing that in India. Whatever that nationalism is, it's a sure path to becoming a failed state. And so for me, when I see what's happening in the United States, it really concerns me, because as a Muslim that has been working for separation of religion and state in Muslim majority societies and governments and that sort of system, it is a stark reminder for me how much harder we have to be working here at home in the United States to really enforce that separation of religion and state. And there's so many cases in the courts right now in the United States that is really challenging the separation of religion and state. And if I may say that I've written for many years that the way some of the legislators in the US have been elected into office has been measured by their interpretation of Christianity. And unfortunately, they've been legislating them. And for me, that is no different than the Sharia laws that are being legislated and implemented as the law of the land. So I call that Christian Sharia law, because it's basically your extrapolation of your interpretation of your religion and legislating into law for the rest of us. And so I do not believe in theocracy. And the way we go about it is that we challenge the interpretation of Islam in the context of human rights at all levels, including in the community levels and with our partner organizations wherever we work around the world, to really start thinking and inculcating that culture of human rights in Muslim societies, but within the context of Islam, but really inculcating that culture that Reverend Chris Turner was saying about the tribalism and how we need to challenge our own culture. And so that's the sort of work that we're doing, and how the dots really connect one to the other. And the way the dots are connecting right now is a little bit scary. So I conclude with that.